Okay, I haven't seen this video, but it came up on recommended. It's by Joshua Fluke, and it is titled, "This is Why Tipping Culture is Out of Control." And just the title alone, I agree with that, so I want to see where he goes with it.
Study that just came out. If you're wondering why there's these tip screens on every table in America, well, it's because people tip 11% more digitally than they do with cash.
Well, that's
to tip
obvious.
or not to tip. That appears to be
How much easier is it to hit a button than to either write down the proper amount or go in your pocket and pick out the right amount of change? It's way easier when they just put up buttons there and make it more difficult to see the no tip button, and there's 4, 10, 15, 20, 25%.
the question yet again as tipping options pop up in new places.
Welcome to the tipping point. Not the psychological kind, but the kind that hits your wallet.
I'm purchasing an office chair online, and they're asking me if I want to leave a tip.
Today, we're diving into the curious world of tipping, where it feels like every checkout screen in America has suddenly sprouted a big blinking tip me button. Gone are
They all are. The only one I can think of offhand that I go to and doesn't ask for a tip is grocery stores. And I'm actually kind of surprised that they don't.
the days when tipping was confined to restaurants and taxis. Now, thanks to omnipresent glowing screens, everything from your barista to your self-checkout is looking for a little extra.
I don't have it at self-checkout, but baristas,
Does it seem
yes.
like one day you're
All
just
fast
buying
food,
a coffee
yes.
and the next you're doing the tipping tango with a digital screen that won't let you proceed until you've awkwardly decided how generous you're feeling? You're in uncaffeinated purgatory until you tap your way out. Or maybe the ride-sharing scenario. No sooner has the vehicle stopped than your phone dings with a prompt for a tip.
Uber now displays tipping options
Yeah.
more prominently in the app, and Dan says he's noticed the difference.
The real chunk of where you made your money is tipping.
Now sure, the driver might rely on these
That's one that I'm more okay with. Kind of like, if I get a good Uber driver, I will tip them well. One that I have trouble with is like DoorDash or like Uber Eats. Like, I don't want them to spit in my food, but they're also just driving my food. So like, yeah, I tip a pizza delivery driver, so I'll tip an Uber Eats driver. But like, how much should that tip be? Like, and then you go buy a coffee, literally a coffee, they push a button or pour a black coffee and hand it to you. Am I supposed to pay them $1 for that on top of already paying for the coffee?
tips, but the prompt itself adds an instant layer of obligation, making what could be a simple transaction feel like a moral judgment.
Restaurant servers make as little as $4 an hour, and they're expected to make up the rest.
Also fine with tipping restaurant servers. I think like that's a must. Like, that's the one that's, I think, obvious that everyone does.
In tip, should employers pay more so that people aren't so dependent on their tips?
You see, in the U.S.,
But then
the
there's
federal
that,
minimum
too.
wage for tipped employees is $2.13 per hour, provided that this amount
Jesus.
plus the tips received equals at least the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour.
I didn't know that.
Otherwise, your company, the employer, must make up the difference. This system allows businesses, particularly in the hospitality and service industries, to legally pay significantly lower wages on the assumption that tips will cover that shortfall.
Larry Kramer says based on his years of restaurant experience, he believes the current system of tipping works best for everyone.
And I don't know about this, but like when I go to get like Steph shawarma or go grab like a poutine or something like that, and I'm at like a fast food kind of place, I don't tip. Like they literally like take 3 minutes and put together my food, and I don't tip there. Like, is that wrong? Because like I grew up and you never tipped at that kind of place. If you were like sitting down and being served and like there's more to the service, then like a tip should be a tip. Like you earned it, right? Like, I'm paying for food at your restaurant. I'm already paying for it. I don't need to tip. And yeah, Troy, you make a good point. It's almost as though you feel like peer pressured to do this. I completely agree.
Some person might tip 30%. Some person might tip 18%. So the server makes a lot more by getting tips. It also
Most of the people that I know that are servers do make a lot more than minimum wage.
motivates the server to do well.
Federal law says businesses can pay tipped employees as little as $2.13 an hour.
And the reason for that is because they expect you to make around $5.12 an hour in tips. That's $5.12 an hour the company doesn't have to pay. If you aren't making $5.12 an hour in tips, then the company has to pay out of pocket to match $7.25 an hour. I want to give you a really clear example of how this works. Here's a chart that that shows you make about $6.
Yeah, I don't think this is where the issue is. Like, we shouldn't be talking about restaurants here. Like, those are the ones that make sense. We should be talking about, like, going to Tim Hortons. Actually, I don't know if they charge for tip, but like
an hour in tips.
places like
After
that.
Working 8 hours, you make $65.04 as the employee, but the employer only has to pay you $17.04. Okay, now let me show you this chart with $0 an hour in tips. Your company has to pay out of pocket
Oh, so this is a tax thing where they're going with this.
to get you to the minimum wage for that day, which is $58. Now, does it make sense why companies love employing tipped workers?
Yeah.
Because it helps pay for the employees.
But let's imagine a world where your coffee doesn't come with a side of guilt. That's the world Cook Unity lives in, which is today's sponsor. If deciding whether to tip or not has you feeling like you're on a game show where every answer feels wrong, then with Cook Unity, the only pressure you'll feel is deciding which meal to heat up next. If you've never heard of Cook Unity before, they're chef-crafted meals delivered to you weekly. And they have choices.
Oh, so
Boy,
it's
do
like
they have
Chef's
choices.
Plate
East Coast,
or
West
like
Coast. You want
any of
Texas
those.
food? They got Texas food.
Hello
Now,
Fresh.
let's say you're a bit pickier than that, or your dietary needs are different. They actually have filters on your filters for your filters. I mean, come on, they have a pizza filter. You want protein only? They got it. Not that
Oh,
kind
that's
of
actually
protein? Hey,
cool.
that's cool too. They got veggie meal. As you can see, the chefs over at Cook Unity offer a wide range of meals, over 7 different dietary preference filters, including vegan, paleo, and gluten-free options. Let me show you a few meals I ordered. First up, we've got herb roasted chicken breast from Chef Kevin Meehan. This
Oh, so
chicken's
there's-
got
it's- so it's
herbs
more like
than a farmer's
Factor.
market on a Sunday morning. That's the one I'm actually eating while I'm editing this video. Every time I cook chicken and heat it up, it tastes like rubber. But this tastes like it's from the restaurant. There's the barbecue chicken burrito by Chef Ruben Garcia.
That looks
and lastly,
delicious.
rainbow chicken and pasta salad by Chef Nelson Brazella. The
That one
salad's
doesn't
got
look
more
as good.
layers than your favorite winter
The burrito
outfit,
bowl
and
is
it's
the
dressed
winner.
better too. That's because the chefs at Cook Unity use real ingredients, nothing artificial. You can pause, skip, or cancel faster than you can, not tip on the digital screen at least. If you didn't get it, there's no tipping required. It's quite the opposite. If you go to cookunity.com/fluke50, you'll actually get 50% off your first order. Not a tip jar in sight. So go support the people who support this channel and get yourself one of these delicious Cook Unity meals. So why the sudden spread of tipping everywhere? Post-COVID, a lot of consumers, not everyone, started to
I didn't really think about it until he just said that. It is a post-COVID thing. I did not see that before COVID. And now it's everywhere.
appreciate service workers more.
Square is a leader in these point of sales devices. They tell us when the pandemic started, tipping became more commonplace to support workers during those takeout orders. And that mentality appears to have stuck.
Do you know a lot of other restaurateurs?
Yes, I do.
Do they generally feel the same way that you do about the tipping structure?
Of course
I
they
think
would.
it's pretty much a consensus now in the industry, and that's why these QSRs are adding tips to their business. Before, you wouldn't have it at a Sweet Green.
Trey said, what is your opinion on these videos where tippers, like YouTubers, go in and tip these waitresses huge tips and how it is life-changing? Just curious. I mean, I think you could go into any job pretty much, like any like blue collar or like service industry or Walmart, and be like, here's a $10,000 tip. And yeah, it's absolutely life-changing. Not to mention they're giving it to them in cash, which means that as long as they don't put it in the bank, it's not taxable. Well, it probably is, but I don't know how it works in the States. But yeah, as long as these people who are making those videos actually give them the money and it's not just like a show, then why not?
Or a dig or a coffee shop, but they're adding a tipping mechanism as well because it helps pay for the employees.
See, there you go, from a business owner himself.
Because it helps pay for the employees.
That way, I don't have to. Thank you for making it exceptionally easy for everyone to know where to not work. I wonder how many people apply there.
So I think where I draw the line is if you're at like a coffee place and they are asking for a tip on a coffee. What he is saying is that that is helping the owner pay for the employees. When I am tipping someone, I don't want them to just be making minimum wage and me helping pay for that. I want to give them something above and beyond what they should be making because they have done an exceptional job and earned a tip. That is the way I look at it. Or if like a good Uber driver or cab driver or whatever, I will tip him, especially if they do a good job. I will literally tip them more or less depending on how they drive and whether they're good at conversation and they know how much to have a conversation.
After this,
As prices go up and more services outside of traditional restaurants are asking their customers if they'd like to toss in a few bucks extra. Some people are starting to feel what's been labeled as tipping fatigue.
Now, if you're anything like me, I'm sure you're wondering, does being put on the spot while someone watches you affect how much you're tipping? Turns out, absolutely.
I always tip because I feel like I should, but I don't always feel like I should.
Studies show that when other people are watching, people...
That's a really good point, Matt. He said, what gets me is the tipping before, like they ring up your coffee and ask for a tip before you even get your order. Yeah, your coffee could be ass. And in fact, I probably won't even have a sip of that for 15 minutes, but you already want me to tip you. I don't even know how good the coffee you made is. Very good point. Also, with what they're going with tipping fatigue, I feel as though with them adding more tips to like coffee or shawarma or any of these like little quick exchanges, it makes me want to tip less. And then the people who get screwed over are those like servers and people who I would normally tip a good amount, because at that point I'm like, I've tipped 7 people today and you're the only one I probably should have.
People tip more. It's actually intricately tied to social pressures and the desire to avoid appearing stingy or unappreciative in public. Payments.com highlights
care.
research indicating that digital screens at checkout
tip people who
amplify
do
this
a good
pressure
job.
significantly. Right here it says social pressure drives up tips by 50%. So here's the chart, and down here you can see when no one's watching, people tip an average of 10%. When a stranger's watching, you get 12%. A family friend or the worker receiving the tip, you're probably going to tip 15%. Another chart right here shows that if you have a tip jar, people tip around 10%, but if you have a digital screen asking for that money, they tip around 15%. This part of the study is
Interesting.
nuts. Despite most consumers, 75% of them believing that it is inappropriate for self-checkout kiosks to have the tip option.
Why would I've never seen that? That is one I have not seen. A self-checkout kiosk having a tip. What are you tipping, the robot?
Significant portions still comply with these requests. 59% of consumers tipped when asked to do
Do I get the money myself because I scanned everything?
so at a fast food establishment, and 62% of people tip at retail or grocery stores. Wait a minute, you're telling me that 25% of people think it is okay for self-checkout kiosks to have a tipping option? Who's this other 25%? And now that you know how tipping works, you gotta love the CEO's take. Your ability to tip with a smartphone is important for 2 reasons. The first one is through retention of keeping staff who normally don't get tips, and second, it provides a simple option for guests to show their appreciation at any time without fumbling for cash. Or is that because it's money you don't have to pay them? Or how about this
Yeah.
guy, Brian?
That's a really good point. I was just thinking that before he said it. I think we should push the opposite direction. If this is a way for business owners to save on paying the wage for their employees, tips should be above and beyond the wage that their employer is already paying them. That is what I think, at least. So to me, they shouldn't be able to do that tax-wise. They should have to give them the tips on top of their wage already. So the way to fix that is only tipping with cash, which no one ever has on them, but there's got to be another way to look at that.
Brian, he says that your ability to get tips could be as transformative as early wage access. Or how about this CEO David here, who runs a bunch of hotels and partnered with this company called Shiny. So I guess Shiny allows you to tip housekeeping. We could pay people more, or we could pay for the service that allows people to tip.
That is one I'm actually okay with tipping, but I want it to go directly to them. So like put $20 on the bed.
Tip them instead of just paying that to our people, because I imagine you paid for this service you partnered with to
Yeah.
allow people to tip them. Anyways,
Yeah.
tipping is out of control. What do you think? If you enjoyed today's video, hit that like.
When I go to like an all-inclusive resort or something like that, I always, the first day that I'm there, I find the best bartender, give them a big tip. I find the best, well, I don't find the housekeeper. I put $20 or $50 on the bed of the room, and that like is my tip to the housekeeper for a week. Every time I always do at least those 2.
Button and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Feel free to share the video with someone else if you think it would help them out. And I hope you keep tipping people generously, but just remember where this whole thing comes from. If you have anything else you'd like me to show on the channel, feel free to reach.
So yeah, the argument of this comes down kind of what Jawick says. Just wanted to say tipping in restaurants is very, very tricky. Business owners low-key leave it to the customers to pay their workers, which is crazy. So yeah, other places other than like North America, tipping is not a common. I believe it's like the UK. Is anyone here from the UK where they don't tip? Or at least like for very specific situations they tip? Anyone in chat from the UK? But yeah, like that's kind of what I was saying. The minimum wage should be the minimum wage. You can pay your employees the minimum wage, and then anything that they are tipped is on top of that. They shouldn't be able to like subsidize the payments of their employees off of tips. The employer should never be touching the tip money. The tips should be going directly to the people who are doing the job. At least that's my opinion. And the owner should absolutely not get any of those tips unless they are out there being your server. Then maybe. But I mean, if they're a good employer, they're probably going to give that to their employees anyway, but who knows? Yeah, so tipping's out of control, and I'm never tipping for a coffee. You have to like juggle coffees, which good luck, in order for me to tip for a coffee. That's my opinion on that one. Anyway, what time do we got here? It's 11:14. How do I feel about tip splits between coworkers? So I never worked at a restaurant. I feel like at certain places it would probably be pretty good. But at the same time, if you do a good job, and like Joshua Wiseman, he's a YouTube chef. He talked about how a lot of restaurants, their kitchens don't necessarily get tipped out. And they absolutely should. They're cooking your food. So I feel like it's kind of necessary. But then I also think that your coworkers should have a say in who works together. Like if there's a really crappy waitress or waiter, the people you're working with should be able to be like, they suck, they're not working, and your boss should listen to you. Because if they're affecting your wage because they're doing a horrible job, yeah. But basically what I'm saying is the split should go to all of the employees if they're going to do that, and probably including the kitchen staff. Never worked at a restaurant neither, but definitely agree with you on the kitchen getting a cut. But bartenders are on the fence about split tips. Yeah, that's because bartenders by far make the most tips out of everyone working there. If you work at a bar, that is a 50-50 bar, 50-50 food, the way to do it is the tip on a bill should equally be proportioned by the... no, that wouldn't work either. I was going to say equally be proportioned by the amount of drinks that are served and the amount of food, but that wouldn't really work because most people just get like one drink and food. So yeah, that doesn't work. And then the servers, there has to be like an even split and something that's come up with. But yeah, I see why bartenders are on the fence about that one because they by far make the most tips. I can show you my controller. This is my controller here. I have come on, there. I have a Control Freak on it, and then that's the layout. The clicky. Yeah. I just love that they interviewed a restaurant owner on the tipping culture and not all the other places. Yeah. I would have much preferred to see like restaurants. There should be tips. I agree with that. Also, the restaurant industry is tough to make money in. I have to sneeze. I know a couple people who own restaurants, and like the margins of where they make money, they don't really make money off of the food. They make money off of selling booze, at least in Canada. So, yeah. Yeah, her dad, my wife was raised by a family in the restaurant business. Her dad is a lifetime waiter, and tips are always appreciated. Yeah, a waiter, if you're a good waiter or waitress, it's something you can live off of for sure. Especially if you're at like a good restaurant or something. But like I said, you should have your minimum wage, and I'm fine if the server minimum wage is less than normal minimum wage. But always those tips should go on top of it. And within reason, the wage being lower. Like $2 an hour is dumb. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm going to end the stream here. I don't know what's going on the main channel for videos today. There's going to be some stuff going up on the second channel. Yeah, McDonald's shouldn't be asking for tips. I think we all agree on that. Anyway, I appreciate you guys coming out. We'll be live again tomorrow at 9. I don't know what we'll be playing, but we'll take it from there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time.